very often I find that many Christians are struggling with their faith. They're struggling about their failure, not being good enough, not making the grade. As a Christian, how do you stand there? How does it work? So many are just so discouraged and disheartened and even defeated. What does Scripture say about this? Because Paul talks about this in particular, and he was concerned about Christians who had missed the point, who had forgotten what it was all about, and who had started to lean on their own performance. And that's what we do. We start to lean on our own performance, and we think that if we're not good enough, and none of us are, of course, we're just not going to make it. So I want to bring you to Galatians chapter 3. And in Galatians chapter 3, I like to ask the questions that Paul asks right at the beginning of the chapter. He asks a number of questions, and they're very important questions. He starts off with, "You foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified." First of all, we can be really foolish. But he says in his first question is, who has bewitched you? Someone has come in and distorted things. They've taken you for a ride. And that happens. We can even take ourselves for a ride. He says, before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. Look, you've heard the gospel. You got saved. What's wrong with you? What's happened? Something's gone wrong here. And then he asks this very important question about when you got saved and what happened and how it happened. I would like to learn just one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit by observing the law or by believing what you heard? Which was it? Why did God give you His Spirit? How did you get born again, born of the Spirit? How did you get this new life? That the new has come and the old is gone. How did that happen? By keeping the law? Were you good enough? Or was it because you believed the good news that Jesus paid for your sin on the cross, paid your debt in full, and on the third day when He rose from the dead, everyone who believes that God raised Him from the dead is credited with the righteousness of God by faith. Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. He didn't keep the law, he believed. So how did you get the Spirit? And then Paul asks another question. Are you so foolish? After beginning with the Spirit, are you now being perfected by the flesh? We begin with the Spirit. We get saved by the Spirit. The Spirit does that in us. Gives us a new life. So what do we say? Hey, thank you, Holy Spirit, now I'm going to do it myself? But that's in essence what we are saying when we feel defeated, when we feel pulled down, and we're looking at how good we aren't. Oops. There's the trouble walking these tracks. It's dodgy. One false move and you're gone. And these rails are like the law. They're hard. They're unforgiving. Any mistake, you come off these rails, you crash. And that's the law. And the gospel's not that way. The gospel, whoops, is about faith. It's by faith. From faith to faith. From beginning to end, it's faith in God. In what He's done, not in what we can do. And then Paul asks this question. He says, have you suffered so much for nothing, if it really was for nothing? Because many have suffered for their faith and are suffering today. Was that all a waste of time? Look, if you can get to God by being good enough, then that was just a waste of time. How sad is that? And then there's another question Paul has, and this is a humdinger. The first one is how you got saved. Did God give you his Spirit because you observe the Lord, because you believe what you heard? Now he talks in the present tense, today. He says, does God give you his Spirit and work miracles among you because you observe the law, or because you believe what you heard? Is it because you believe the gospel, or because you're good enough? You know what? No one's good enough. I'm not good enough. You're not good enough. Church leaders aren't good enough. Nobody's good enough. So the question is, why did God give you his Spirit? Why does he give you his Spirit today? You know the answer. It's at this point when I'm talking to people who are struggling that a big smile comes on their face, because they realize, no, God gives me his Spirit because he's done it all, and it's by faith. I don't have to try to keep the law. That's not what the law is there for. Go look at that in another video. But there are people who say, no, you got to keep the law. You got to keep the 10 Commandments. Because the Christian is under the 10 Commandments. That is the moral law. You can't ignore it. Now, there's nothing wrong with the law, but there is something wrong with the wrong use of the law. This is about good news. What is the good news? Does God give you his Spirit and perhaps work miracles among you because you observe the law, or because you believe what you heard? It's one or the other. Paul doesn't give any other choice. He says it's one or the other. It's not a mixture. But we'll look at that at the next video in a bit more depth. Is Jesus' gospel different to Paul's gospel? How do we live as Christians if it's not by the law? What are we supposed to do? These are fundamental issues. So keep watching, subscribe, click the little bell to get notifications of following videos, and give it a thumbs up if you like it. If you've questions, stick them in the comments section below. If you have suggestions, stick them in there. And well, I hope the Lord blesses you with this, and read Galatians chapter 3 and see for yourself what God says about how you stand before him, because we've only looked at the first few questions and there's much more in there. Thanks, and God bless.